My name is Evelyn Price, and the day my world fell apart began with a smirk I still see when I close my eyes at night. I was sitting at the small kitchen table of our Seattle apartment, a bank statement spread out in front of me. The numbers on the page seemed almost unreal, like a cruel joke. $80,000 gone. Every cent we had worked and saved for drained away. Even the money from the second mortgage we'd taken on this place had vanished, along with the sapphire necklace my grandmother left me, sold off to pay a debt that wasn't even mine. I had done it all for love, for the man I thought would be my partner in everything. But instead of gratitude, I was met with words that shattered me. "I'm leaving, Evelyn." "I can't do this anymore," Liam said, his voice cold and final. Then came the voice that cut deeper than his, the sharp, disdainful tone of his mother. "We never liked you anyway." The words echoed in my mind as I sat motionless, the soft patter of Seattle rain against the window sounding like a drumbeat for morning. I had given everything, my savings, my security, even my grandmother's heirloom, to rescue his family from collapse. And this was my reward, an empty apartment and a heart splintered beyond recognition. Yet, as numbness gave way to anger, something inside me hardened. I swore then and there they would regret dismissing me. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. To understand how I reached that moment, I have to take you back. I grew up in a working class part of Seattle. My parents never had much, but they gave me honesty, grit, and the determination to build a better life. I remember sitting with my mom at the kitchen table, clipping coupons to make ends meet, all the while dreaming of a day when money wasn't a constant weight pressing down. Teaching became my calling. I loved standing in front of a classroom, guiding young minds, celebrating every smile, every spark of curiosity. That's where my heart lived when I first met Liam. It was in the university library. I was juggling an armful of books for lesson planning when they started to slip. Out of nowhere, he caught them, his hazel eyes warm and amused. "Need a hand? Or were you planning to juggle these all the way home?" he teased. His laugh lit up the room, and in that instant I was his. We dated quickly, falling into the kind of romance you think only exists in films. Lazy afternoons at Gasworks Park, midnight coffee runs, whispered kisses beneath the Fremont Bridge. He became my everything. When he proposed during a picnic at sunset, I didn't even hesitate. My whole chest swelled with joy as I said yes. Our wedding was modest, but perfect. A little chapel overlooking Puget Sound, close friends and family gathered around. Liam's family seemed pleasant enough, though there was a distance I couldn't quite name. His mother, Vivian, pulled me close, murmuring, "Welcome to the family, dear." At the time, I believed her. I believed I had finally found my place. Those first years were filled with hope and plans. Liam was making strides at Price Enterprises, his family's financial firm, while I poured myself into teaching. We weren't wealthy, but we were content, sketching out dreams of a house on Capitol Hill, maybe children someday. Money was always tight. Seattle wasn't kind in that regard. But I believed love would be enough to carry us through. Then came the night everything shifted. Liam walked in late, pale and shaken, his tie loosened, his voice low. "Evelyn, my family's in trouble." My stomach nodded as he explained. His parents and sister had sunk themselves into staggering debt, years of reckless spending and failed investments. $180,000, maybe more. Bankruptcy loomed, along with the threat of legal disaster. "If we help them, they can start over," he pleaded, desperation in his eyes. $80,000 was everything we had, the sum of years of sacrifice and saving. It was our cushion, our future. But I loved him, and by then I loved his family too. They were mine, or so I thought. So I agreed. We would do it together. The months that followed nearly broke me. We emptied our savings account, refinanced our apartment, and I even parted with my grandmother's necklace, a piece of her history I had sworn I'd keep forever. I took on private tutoring sessions after school, staying up into the night grading and preparing lessons. Liam put in endless overtime, stumbling home bone tired. We barely saw each other, but I clung to the thought that this sacrifice was for something greater, that we were saving them, proving that love meant action. When the final payment was made, I exhaled for the first time in months. It was done. They were safe. Surely I thought there would be gratitude. A thank you. A simple acknowledgement. But silence met me instead. No dinner, no note, no word of appreciation. When I asked Liam about it, his answer was a dismissive shrug. They're proud people, Evelyn. Give them time. I believed him then. But I shouldn't have. I had given them all the time in the world. Days stretched into weeks, then weeks into months, while our finances dangled over the edge of ruin. I pinched every penny until it screamed, clipping coupons like I used to as a girl, praying that somehow the sacrifices would mean something in the end. Hope was the only thing that kept me breathing, until the moment it was ripped away. I was in the kitchen that day, staring at the pitiful groceries I was trying to stretch into meals for a week. That's when Liam walked in. His eyes didn't belong to the man I once knew. They were cold, distant, as if he had already left me behind. His voice was steady, flat. Evelyn, we need to talk. I'm leaving. The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the counter, my heart pounding in my ears. Leaving? But we did this together. We sacrificed everything for your family. He didn't flinch. He just shook his head. There's no we anymore. I can't do this. The stress, the weight, it's too much. I need a fresh start. I tried to hold on, tried to make him see reason. What about your family? The debt we cleared? The savings we gave up? He paused at the door, his hand on the knob, and turned just enough for his words to cut me open. They'll be fine. Talk to them. Then he was gone, the sound of the door clicking shut echoing through the silence he left behind. Shaking, I grabbed the phone. When Vivian answered, her tone was sharp, her laughter cruel. Jack left, she said, as if it were a punchline. Then, in a voice dripping with venom, Oh, Evelyn, did you really think money would make us accept you? We never liked you. Liam finally came to his senses. The words hollowed me out. I dropped the phone, hearing her laughter echo long after the line went dead. They had used me, drained me, and then discarded me as though I were nothing. But standing there in my empty apartment, something shifted inside me. The grief was real, but beneath it a fire began to burn. Rage, fierce and unyielding, took root where despair had lived. They thought I'd crumble, vanish into the background of their glittering lives. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, as rain lashed against the windows, I stared into the mirror. The woman looking back barely resembled me, red eyes, disheveled hair, heartbreak etched into her face. Yet behind the exhaustion, a spark of defiance glimmered. She wasn't weak. She wasn't broken. She was surviving, and she was ready to fight. That's when I made my choice. Evelyn Price, the trusting schoolteacher who gave up everything for love, was gone. In her place, I would become Olivia Reed, confident, sharp, and untouchable. Olivia wasn't a mask. She was a weapon. With the last of my money, I reinvented myself. Tailored blazers, sleek heels that announced my arrival with every step, a hairstyle polished to perfection, makeup that sharpened my features into something powerful. I studied a new way of speaking, measured, commanding, unshakable. When Olivia Reed entered a room, people would listen. But a new wardrobe wasn't enough. I dove into knowledge the way others dive into the deep end. Finance courses, books on markets and investments, late nights studying strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was arming myself with the same tools Liam's family had once used against me. The difference was I would use them smarter, sharper, and I wouldn't fight alone. I reached out to Noah, an old friend from college who'd become a private investigator. We met in a quiet cafe tucked away on Capitol Hill, the kind of place where secrets could pass unnoticed. Over steaming mugs, I told him a version of the truth, carefully cloaked, Olivia's identity kept in the shadows. I think Liam's family is hiding something, I said steadily, though my stomach was twisted into knots. Financial trouble may be worse. Can you dig into it for me? Noah studied me for a long moment, his brow furrowed, his eyes probing for cracks. Evelyn, if they're as corrupt as you believe, this isn't just risky, it's dangerous. You're playing with fire. He didn't know it yet, but I had already decided I was willing to burn. I locked eyes with him, his question hanging in the air. Are you sure? I swallowed hard. I've never been more certain of anything. Noah gave a small nod, his expression unreadable, but his promise was clear. He'd dig into the Price family businesses. While he buried himself in his end of the investigation, I devoted myself to my own hunt. My nights were spent hunched over the glow of my laptop in my tiny apartment, the silence broken only by the hum of the fridge and the occasional rattle of pipes. I dove into public records, old newspapers, obscure blogs, even combed through forgotten social media posts. Slowly, I pieced together a picture of the Price empire. Henry Price's sprawling financial machine, with roots deep in real estate, investments, and charities that painted them as the city's benefactors. But beneath that glossy surface lay shadows. Hushed lawsuits, failed ventures swept from headlines, and one particularly chilling event, a boating accident years ago that claimed the life of Henry's uncle, Victor. Some had called it suspicious. Every scrap of information I found, I stored carefully, building a private archive. My own little arsenal of truths waiting to be deployed. At the same time, I forced myself to step into a new world. With the little money I had left after the debts, I dipped into small investments. I was cautious, terrified of losing what little remained, but to my surprise, I had a knack for it. The profits came slowly, steadily, but each gain gave me something priceless: confidence. Every dollar was like a stone in the wall I was raising against the prices. But I knew money alone wouldn't take them down. I needed proximity, access. So Olivia Reed was born. I slipped into borrowed dresses and rented heels, appearing at charity galas and business mixers where Seattle's elite mingled. To them, I was a fresh face, clever with investments, charming but never loud, hovering just outside the spotlight. They smiled at me, dismissed me, never realizing how carefully I watched, listened, absorbed. Then came the night I uncovered a thread too dangerous to ignore. In an old Seattle Times archive, I stumbled on Victor's death once more. The article noted his passing coincided with a financial rough patch for the Prices. Desperation, I thought. Could they have crossed that line? I sent what I had to Noah. His reply landed like a hammer. Before Victor's death, his estate had been drained, the funds siphoned into accounts controlled by the Prices. It wasn't proof, but it was a rope I could start pulling, and I intended to tug until it unraveled everything. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd found Lauren, a young journalist at the Seattle Post, sharp, hungry, eager to prove herself. Over steaming mugs of coffee, I began passing her fragments of the puzzle, always keeping my name out of it. This could be front page, she'd whispered once, her eyes sparking with ambition. Just be careful, I warned her, masking the thrill beneath my calm tone. The Prices don't fight fair. Weeks blurred into months, and I wore my two lives like mismatched skins. By day, I was Evelyn, the weary teacher who smiled politely at co-workers, the woman they pitted for a divorce she never spoke about. By night, I was Olivia, the phantom guest at glittering events, the quiet collector of secrets, the shadow the Prices never saw creeping closer. Every discovery hardened my resolve. They thought they had stripped me of everything, left me powerless and discarded. But they had underestimated me. They built their fortune on deception and betrayal. I was forging a weapon far stronger, truth, sharp and relentless. One night I stood by the window of my apartment, watching Seattle's skyline glitter against the dark. That city, their city, was about to tremble. I had spent months weaving myself into their world, and now the net was ready to close. The next move came at Pike Place Market. I chose the cafe carefully, bustling with tourists so no one would notice us. Lauren slipped into the seat across from me, her notebook tucked under her arm. I slid a USB drive across the table. Inside was everything: evidence of crooked loans, tax evasion, funds laundered through their so-called charities, irregular transfers that reeked of fraud. Lauren's fingers closed around the drive, her eyes wide. "This is explosive," she whispered, barely audible above the cafe's chatter. "If this holds up, it's bigger than I imagined." Her gaze flicked to mine. "Are you sure you want to stay in the shadows?" My pulse raced, but my voice stayed firm. "Yes, just make it matter." I forced a smile, though inside my heart was pounding. The fuse had been lit. Now all I had to do was watch the empire burn. The truth about the prices needed to be dragged into the light. Within days of Lauren's article hitting the Seattle Post, the city was buzzing. Price Enterprises under fire. Fraud allegations rock Seattle's elite. The headlines screamed from every newsstand, while online, hashtags spread like wildfire. Hashtag price scandal trended as locals shared stories of the family's arrogance, their greed, their cruelty. I sat in my small apartment with a glass of red wine, watching it all unfold. This was only the beginning. Their empire was showing its first cracks, business partners releasing carefully worded statements, whispers of a federal probe circling like vultures. The prices scrambled, hiding behind PR statements about baseless smears, but I knew better. The match was lit, and the flames were spreading. To keep the fire alive, I had to get closer. The perfect chance came with a charity gala at the Chihuly Garden and Glass, one of those events the Prices never missed. Vivian Price, their sharp-tongued matriarch, always ruled the evening like a queen. If I wanted her attention, I'd get it there. I stepped into the gallery as Olivia Reed, wrapped in a sleek black dress, confidence painted onto my face. The glass sculpture shimmered like frozen fire, but my eyes sought only Vivian. She stood in the center of a crowd, laughing, flawless as ever. For a moment, our gazes locked. I caught the briefest flicker of doubt in her eyes. She didn't recognize me, but she felt me. Good. I wanted her to sense the storm coming. I glided toward her, champagne in hand, voice smooth as silk. Vivian. What a pleasure, I said, extending my hand. Olivia Reed, new to Seattle's business scene. I've heard a great deal about your family. Her perfect smile trembled ever so slightly before she slipped into politeness. Miss Reed, she replied, her tone clipped, her handshake icy. How kind of you to join us. Are you here to invest? The word hung between us, heavy with suspicion. I tilted my head, smiling wider. Oh, I'm always looking for opportunities. Perhaps we'll talk soon. She excused herself quickly, the mask cracking just enough for me to see the tension beneath. Perfect. The seed of doubt had been planted. Back in my apartment, adrenaline still buzzing through me, I dug deeper. Noah had come through again, financial records, obscure filings, hints of a Cayman Islands account hidden under layers of shell companies. The proof I needed was locked away, almost certainly in Henry Price's private office at their downtown headquarters. Crossing that line meant no turning back. And I crossed it anyway. One night, disguised as maintenance staff with a forged ID, I walked past the security desk without a second glance. Weeks of practicing lockpicking had led to this moment. Henry's office gleamed with mahogany and glass, but his secrets were hidden behind a framed photo of their lakeside estate. A safe. My hands trembled as I worked the lock, whispering Liam's old stories in my mind. Their anniversary date, of course. The click of the tumblers felt like thunder in my chest. Inside lay the proof. Ledgers, transfer slips, bank statements tying them to the Cayman account. My breath caught as I snapped photos of each page. And then footsteps. Voices. I ducked behind a heavy curtain as Henry and Liam entered, mid-argument. That article's too detailed, Liam hissed. Someone knows too much. Henry dismissed him with a wave. We'll handle it. No one crosses us and survives. My pulse hammered, but they never saw me. I slipped out as silently as I had come, the stolen evidence burning like fire in my phone. By dawn, the photos were in Lauren's inbox. Hours later, her new article dropped. Price Enterprises linked to offshore accounts. Seattle erupted. Regulators circled. Allies retreated. The dynasty was wobbling. I felt the rush of triumph, but also the weight of the deception consuming me. Each step dragged me deeper into shadows until I barely recognized Evelyn anymore. But staring at those damning photos, I knew there was no going back. The Prices had underestimated me. That would be their undoing. Seattle's air felt charged, the calm before a Puget Sound storm. Their empire was cracking, but to destroy them, I had to strike at the foundation, the family itself. United in public, yes, but I knew there were fractures. Every family has them, and I knew exactly where to start. Arya Price, Liam's younger sister, overshadowed, overlooked, resentful. Noah's intel painted her perfectly. Ambitious, hungry, but naive. The flaw in the armor. The crack I could split wide open. And I was ready to exploit it. I created a false identity on social media, a sympathetic Seattle artist named Emma, and reached out to Arya online. I slipped into the role of someone who understood what it was like to live under the weight of a demanding family, someone who might mirror her struggles. Over time, our conversations grew longer, more personal. Her guard softened, and soon she was confiding frustrations she probably hadn't voiced aloud before. "They act like I'm invisible," she typed one night, the bitterness clear in her words. That was the opening I'd been waiting for. "Have you ever thought about stepping out of their shadow?" I asked carefully, planting the seed, but leaving it vague. "With all the scandal, maybe it's time to protect yourself." I layered my concern with just the right balance of sympathy and suggestion. Whenever she spoke about the accusations against Price Enterprises, I pretended to be shocked, letting my questions drip like drops of acid into her doubts. "How much do you really know about what they've done?" I pressed, never too harsh, but just enough to keep her second-guessing her family. Her hesitation was almost tangible through the screen, but cracks were forming. One night, after a particularly explosive fight at home, she opened up more than before, her anger raw and unfiltered. That was when I nudged harder. "Arya, if this all collapses, you don't want to be dragged down with them. Talk to someone, a lawyer. Get ahead of this." And it worked. Word soon spread that Arya had retained her own attorney, separate from the family's. The rumor mill churned with whispers that she was quietly meeting with prosecutors. The Price's unity, once their strongest defense, began to unravel before my eyes. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. I had set the first domino in motion. But Arya was only the beginning. My true focus was Henry, the patriarch, Liam's father, the man whose grip held the entire empire together. Noah had uncovered something devastating. Henry was living a double life. He'd been funneling company money into a sleek penthouse in Belltown, keeping a young mistress there. The evidence was airtight. Bank transfers, photos, even a recorded call where he promised her that one day he'd leave Vivian. I packaged it all neatly and sent it anonymously to Vivian, choosing the timing with care, ensuring Henry would be home when she found it. I could picture the scene, her carefully composed mask cracking, rage boiling over as the truth hit her. The fallout came fast. Neighbors reported shouting so loud it carried beyond the walls of their mansion. Henry was spotted storming away hours later, luggage in hand, his face marred by a fresh bruise. Seattle's gossip circuit pounced on the drama, and the family's image of superiority took another brutal hit. Investors and business partners, already wary from the fraud scandal, began pulling out of deals altogether. Trust in Henry evaporated. But just as I savored the progress, a complication arrived. Simon, the estranged cousin long cast out by the Prices, reappeared out of nowhere, landing a headline-making interview with a local news outlet. He didn't just confirm the fraud allegations. He painted a picture of corruption stretching back decades. At first, I was elated. A defector from inside the family? It felt like a gift. But Noah was quick to caution me. Simon wasn't merely airing grievances. He was hungry for power. Banished years ago for going against the Prices, he now saw their destruction as an opportunity to seize control. His charm, coupled with intimate knowledge of their operations, made him dangerous. He wasn't an ally. He was a rival. So I arranged a meeting, slipping into yet another disguise, this time as Olivia Reed, a polished investor curious about his supposed new venture. We met in a quiet Fremont restaurant, far from curious eyes. Simon surprised me. He was younger than I'd imagined, bearing Liam's sharp angles, but with a harder edge, ambition practically sparking in his gaze. "Miss Reed," he greeted me smoothly, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You're quite the mystery in Seattle circles." I matched his expression, keeping my tone light, casual. "And you," I replied, "are quite the talk of the town these days. Your family must be shocked to see you back." His grin widened, but the warmth never reached his eyes. They stayed cold, calculating. "They've had it coming," he said. And in that moment, I knew Simon Price was a threat I couldn't ignore. Someone had clearly been stirring things up, a hidden hand tugging at strings. My pulse quickened, but my face stayed calm. "All empires built on lies collapse," I said, steering the conversation away. He leaned closer, voice low. And when they collapse, someone always collects the pieces. Someone who knows how to play. In that moment, I understood Simon wasn't an ally. He was a competitor, circling the Price legacy like a hawk. I left with the realization that what I'd started could be taken in a different direction, and not by me. The tension climbed. The Prices were broken, but still dangerous. That night I stood beneath a Seattle sky thick with mist, in front of the old Price shipping warehouse, its rusted sign a monument to a fading dynasty. My phone buzzed with a single line, "I know who you are." Midnight. Waterfront warehouse. Come alone. Every instinct told me to stay away. I went anyway. Vivian stepped from the shadows, pale in the moonlight. My breath stopped. "Hello, Evelyn," she said, voice like a knife. Or should I say Olivia? The name landed with a weight I couldn't shrug off. My legs held me. "I wanted to talk," she added, cool, precise. I listened. She didn't come as the smiling matriarch I'd always seen on the surface. There was something else behind her eyes, a sharpness I recognized. The look of someone who had once been used, discarded, and then quietly bided her time. "I underestimated you," she said, then surprised me with a twist of honesty that felt almost like respect. "You've been busy, but I've been busy too." Vivian told me she'd been building power in the shadows, nursing resentments until they hardened into resolve. She proposed an alliance, not born of affection but of shared grievance. She told me about a board meeting in 3 days at Price Enterprises HQ. Liam, Henry, and their inner circle would gather to salvage what they could. "This is our chance," she said. We shut them down. I bristled at her motives. She had played the family's game for decades. But when she spoke about being sidelined and discarded, I saw a mirror of my own scars. We agreed on her terms. I would do it my way. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. Vivian supplied names, layouts, even security codes. I fact-checked everything with Noah, trusting him but not entirely. We stitched together a dossier. Emails, bank transfers, photographs, and an offshore account that had lived in Henry's safe. It was a living thing, ready to explode. On the morning of the meeting, I dressed like armor. Makeup, a controlled smile. Olivia Reed to the world, but Evelyn Price underneath, fueled and unyielding. Vivian's presence seemed to disarm the guards as we entered the high-rise, and the elevator that climbed felt interminable. My hands trembled around the dossier. The boardroom fell silent when we walked in. Liam's face drained of color. Henry's eyes widened. "What is this?" Henry demanded. Vivian's smile was ruthless. "Sit down, Henry. It's time." I set the dossier on the table with a sound that cut through the room like a shot. "My name is Evelyn Price," I announced, voice steady despite the heat in my chest. "You knew me as Liam's wife. Some of you know me as Olivia Reed. Today I'm here to bring your empire down." Pandemonium followed. Liam lunged forward, but Vivian intercepted him, her words venomous and measured. I pushed forward, voice rising over the chaos. "This contains proof, fraud, tax evasion, bribery, and questions about a death you thought buried." I aimed my gaze at Henry. "You built your fortune on other people's ruin. You thought I was expendable." The room erupted. Then the doors flew open. An FBI agent strode in, authoritative and unyielding. "Henry Price, you're under arrest," he declared, reading charges that matched the contents of my dossier. The scene dissolved into shouts, handcuffs, and stunned silence. Liam's eyes met mine as he was led away. Defeat and a fleeting spark of something that looked like regret. After the storm cleared, Vivian and I were left amid the wreckage. Standing there with sunlight breaking through clouds outside, I felt a strange hollowness. The revenge had landed. The Prices were broken. But what came next? Vivian put a hand on my shoulder and said, almost gently, "This isn't an ending, Evelyn. It's a beginning." Her words echoed in my head as I walked away. Relief and doubt braided together. Headlines followed. The Price downfall dominated news cycles. Liam and Henry faced long prison terms, assets were liquidated, and the family name was poisoned. Yet victory was bittersweet. Without the fire of retribution burning inside me, I felt adrift. Who was I when the fight ended? Noah came by one evening, his concern obvious. You did something extraordinary, he said. But don't let revenge become your whole life. His words stuck with me. I reached out to Lauren, and together we started to write, to tell the story of Price Enterprises, to unpack how a family built its wealth on other people's pain. The act of writing felt like healing, a way to reshape the story that had defined so much of my life. Out of that writing grew something bigger, a foundation to help people who'd been crushed by corporate malfeasance. I used my resources, and the community rallied around the idea. The Evelyn Price Foundation was born, a place for victims of fraud to find legal help, resources, and a platform. Going back to my old school one day, I bumped into Ryan, a former colleague and friend. Evelyn, he said, incredulous and warm. We talked for hours. His steady presence reminded me I had more than one life to reclaim. A year later, I stood on stage at the Foundation's gala, Seattle's skyline like a river of lights behind me. Faces in the crowd, Noah, Lauren, even Vivian lurking in the shadows, watched as I spoke. I opened by saying, "My name is Evelyn Price." I told the story of how I had been dragged into darkness, how rage had driven me, and how I'd turned that rage into something constructive. The applause was thunderous, but the small nod from Ryan in the audience warmed me more than any ovation. In tearing down the Prices, I had destroyed an empire of lies. In building the foundation, I began to construct something real. I was no longer only Olivia Reed, or an avenger in a suit. I was Evelyn, bruised, wiser, and ready to make a different kind of impact. To everyone who followed the journey, to those who felt their own lives reflected in the wreckage and the rebuilding, I said thank you. Your support mattered. Keep seeking truth. Keep speaking up. Every voice changes the story. And with that, with the crowd's applause still ringing, I stepped down from the stage, unsure of exactly what came next, but certain I would keep moving forward.